Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar with OtherPay. My name is Emily. I'm the Senior Campaign Lead here at Birchal. And just before I introduce you to Darren and Simon, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are coming to you from today. Birchal is based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. So today I am joined by Simon and Darren from OtherPay. So Birchal is working with OtherPay on their upcoming crowdsource funding offer. A few of you might be a little bit unfamiliar with what crowdsource funding or CSF is, or you might know it as equity crowdfunding, but it's a relatively new form of fundraising in Australia. It began in around 2018, and it allows startups and small businesses to raise capital from a larger number of smaller or retail investors, as well as wholesale and sophisticated investors through an online platform such as Birchal. So instead of seeking funding from traditional sources such as venture capitalists or banks, companies can turn to the general public, and often in this case, it's their communities, to raise money in exchange for equity in their business. Birchal Financial Services will be the licensed intermediary for this offer. And I just want to let everybody know that the information and discussion in this webinar today is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as advice or a recommendation to invest. So please do your own research and always consider the general CSF risk warning and offer document before investing. If you do need any more information, please head over to birchal.com. You can always reach out to us at support@birchal.com as well. Now, how today's session is going to run, I'll hand over to Simon and Darren in just a moment, and they'll run us through a short presentation all about OtherPay, where they've come from and what they're looking to achieve with this raise, and then we will switch to a Q&A session. So if you do have any questions, just look at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a little Q&A bubble. So please add your questions there, and we will get to those after the presentation. I'd also like to remind you that we are recording today's session. So if you do have to pop off early or would like to rewatch anything, we will be sending a recording around. So without further ado, I will hand over to Simon and Darren.
Thank you, Emily, and good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thanks very much for the opportunity for talking with you today. We put a few slides together. I'm going to share the screen, if I may. Let's just make sure that this works. So everybody see that okay? Very difficult. I appreciate you're all muted, and so I can't hear any sort of feedback. So I'll just talk on, and we'll take the questions from Emily when we get to that particular point at the end. But we put a little bit of an agenda together, whereby in introducing ourselves, I mean, I'm Simon Hewitt, Chief Executive Innovations Officer. Darren is here, the Chief Operations Officer. We sort of felt we didn't want to pitch the business to you per se, because of course, come this weekend, the aspiration is that we will be distributing a very detailed offer document, which will provide, we hope, all of the questions or all of the answers to the questions you may ask, but all of the details about the business in terms of, yes, where we've come from, what we're looking to do, the use of the funds, et cetera, et cetera. We thought before taking questions, we wanted to cover off a few areas that were probably more relevant with regards to explaining, as I say, within the agenda here, you know, what is the problem that OtherPay is here to fix? Because if people don't appreciate that there's a problem, then it's questionable as to whether you would support that particular vision with regards to what we're trying to achieve. Secondly, I was just going to cover off a little bit of the vision, then talking a bit about the industry perspectives. What is different about OtherPay? How is the industry viewing this problem per se? Then also go into a few of the example target markets, so you can understand who we're going to be looking to target, who we expect to use the OtherPay technology. And then after that, give some details with regards to the target timelines, some of the critical timelines over the next 12 months or so. I'll then mention a few of the owner benefits beyond the equity investment that we have available, and then we'll drop into the Q&A. So I hope that's of help. As I say, we have the offer document, but of course, if there are questions at this particular point in time, then fine, ask those. But I thought it would be more relevant to come at it from this perspective and give people more of an insight into the industry and why OtherPay is looking to do what it's doing. So, in terms of the problem, I think we can all acknowledge that it's a significant problem. statistically within Australia alone, $2.2 billion to card fraud. That is something that's been, validated, researched, Australian Competition Consumer Commission. But as you go through the various other bullet points there, the volumes are just are vast. Because fraud is obviously an issue that exists. I don't think anybody's really hiding the fact that it exists, but the extent to which it's there is sometimes hidden within the media. I saw the story of the $2.2 billion loss was tucked away on page 8 or 9 of a national newspaper at one point, not really getting much column coverage, and really just sort of tucked away the fact that we're allowing $2.2 billion in Australia to be lost every year. Well, increasing losses every year. Sort of spells out what the sort of focus is, and people may be getting a little bit complacent with regards to the actual issue. But we recognise there's the issue there. If you look at 4.6% of transactions attempted, suspected of being fraudulent, 80% of cards deemed to have been compromised in the US. And then the following, average price of a cloned MasterCard with PIN and a balance of $7,500 on the dark web being sort of $30. It is a significant problem. I don't think anybody can argue that it's a problem. I don't think anybody would argue within industry that it's a problem. But I think one of the issues we do have within this industry is that articulating the fact that it's a problem is a problem in itself, because if people were to lose confidence in the infrastructure and the technology, then that basically creates another problem in itself. So having established there's a problem, what is the vision? In simple terms, is OtherPay is, to the best of our ability, looking to fix that problem. With our products and our services, we anticipate that if individuals use the product as it should be used, it cannot be defrauded. There's a slight difference with regards to products that are out there at the moment, is that whilst if used as they're meant to be used, they can still be defrauded. So there's a dynamic there that we're trying to basically resolve, is that if you're given a product that actually fixes the problem if used properly, then obviously we can put a dent in fraud. And so obviously we're looking to challenge the status quo and provide consumers with an alternative. And I'll come to the sort of target market later, but that's very much those that not only need it, but those who are willing to use it, those who basically share our passion and vision for change and challenging this loss that's permeating across the world. So that being our vision, the industry perspective is that there's clearly a fear of change in any regard to change. It's not necessarily just the cost, but with regards to the change having an impact on consumer attrition, potentially consumers looking for another way to go, there is very much a sort of a one-size-fits-all mentality. There isn't really options with regards to what you can use. So I'm not overly critical of the solutions that are there. They, on the most part, do what they're meant to do, but they do have holes in them, and we're looking to fill those holes. There's obviously, as I mentioned before, this historical acceptance of loss. That, to an extent, comes to the fact that the profits that are being achieved are quite significant. Therefore, the loss can somewhat be overlooked. But we're questioning why that would be the case. And if we have a solution that could mitigate the sort of fraud levels that we're looking at, then I think that's something that should be looked at. I've mentioned it's no longer deemed newsworthy. And if you look at the industry and their attempts to sort of mitigate fraud, they generally come at the point of minimal compliance with the various standards that are being set, as opposed to actually looking to resolve the threat. Of course, that comes down to the cost. It's a perceived high cost. Part of our model is obviously to put something in market that's economical for the banks to look at and for them to adopt, but also a solution whereby you get that, the choice from a consumer's perspective. We're not naive as well to understand that there is this fear that if the banks support a solution that's more protective than a solution that's already there, then consumers will start to ask the question is, well, what's wrong with what is wrong with what's already there? And they don't want to impact or negatively or adversely impact consumer confidence. From our perspective, there's enough information out there in the media, on the internet, et cetera, that clearly shows that this is a problem. And we are simply looking to fix it. I sort of find it interesting as well, and I don't know how much TV all of you watch, but whether it's the banks here, whether it's various organizations promoting their protection of consumers with the use of fraud detection mechanisms, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is technology that was pretty much there when I was head of security or chief security officer for the banks, 20 years ago or so. So they're promoting something that's there. They realize that consumers like to feel protected. From our perspective, we want to make them feel beyond protected. We want them to feel safe and realize they're using something that is not susceptible to fraud, and also doesn't need the sort of retrospective fraud detection mechanisms. So if you use it as intended, you should be pretty safe. So our target markets, obviously those consumers that have experienced fraud, there's the realization from their perspective that it can be painful. It can take a while to get the money back. There are, of course, other individuals that just think that, well, the bank will pay, it doesn't really matter. But as I've sort of said down the bottom, no matter who commits the fraud, everyone is a victim. It's very true of the fact that if there is this relaxation on one side with regards to what the banks are prepared to do, and other consumers that are fighting to get their money back, or the merchants that are losing their products and revenue, then this is a holistic issue that needs everybody to basically sort of lean in. But we do appreciate that a lot of people won't. A lot of people use, mobile. A lot of people don't really care about security. A lot of people put convenience above security. That's fine. There is a big enough market out there for us to target for those people that do care. And so those that have experienced fraud and don't want to repeat that experience, that's a huge market. There's obviously a market for those that love technology and are very supportive of Australian enterprise, another clear market that we'll be looking to target. And there's, of course, those consumers that agree with us that allowing the sort of losses that we're allowing to occur is something that shouldn't occur. And for the fact of taking maybe a small additional step in protecting themselves, it could have a demonstrable impact on reducing those sort of fraud levels. So targeting those particular individuals to join us in the movement is something that we're looking to do. We're looking at consumers that make the effort to optimize their sort of merchant rebates and rewards. We've got a loyalty partner where we're integrating with them such that the reward we may be able to get for that individual through OtherPay is potentially better than the reward they may be getting with the card they're currently getting. So we're looking to expand that capability and sort of aggregate and consolidate those rewards such that any card being used with Duo could benefit from that. We have various abilities to provide sustainable charitable giving. That one sort of drops as well into the cash flow management side, in that because we have a product that enables us to manage the whole transactional flow from beginning to end, we can also influence and do changes to the particular transactions, whether that's rounding up the transactions, whether it's taking micropayments to help with end of money cash flow management. There's some really, really interesting things we can do there with regards to charitable giving, of course, and those that are looking to basically alleviate the burden of end of month bills and various things. So there's some exciting things we can do there because we own the transactional flow from beginning to end. We're also looking at consumers who ultimately, whilst our aspiration is to convince people to use the OtherPay technology, for those that aren't, we have a mechanism by which you can basically use the OtherPay technology sitting across the top of it. So for those that are using our technology and their bank, for example, is not willing to allow them to integrate with OtherPay, they can basically link to our technology and get the protection that they want, even if the bank's not prepared or willing to give it to them. So basically the other one we have down the bottom is an interesting one from an inbound perspective. We've had some interest shown from an inbound tourism perspective is, let's say cruise lines, for example, that when they dock at a particular location, around that particular area, fraud would be exponentially greater with regards to pickpocketing, card theft, et cetera, et cetera. So our solution is being looked upon as something that could be given to passengers such that when they dock and they go and basically spend their money, they're using something that can't then be defrauded. So another interesting channel that we can basically target. But those are examples of our target markets. In terms of timelines, just to take you through some of not only where we currently stand at the moment, is that the detailed offer document we mentioned, we hope to have a green light to be able to distribute that to everybody as soon as this Saturday. We know with the private offer opening next Tuesday, we don't want to be distributing that on Tuesday morning in the expectation that people will jump on at noon. We'd like to give you a few days to obviously digest and have a look at that, and if there's any outstanding questions to ask those. But as I said, we've spent a lot of time on the document and we hope it would answer a lot of those particular questions you may be looking to ask. That is basically a 2-day private offer open period during which through the Tuesday and the Wednesday, and then we go public if there's share allocation remaining on the Thursday. With regards to the organisation, our aspiration and hope with the funding is that we would be able to launch a pre-sales campaign probably around end of the third quarter 2024, but also launch the Duo product with an OtherPay prepaid card around November of this year. The one card which consolidates all potential card offerings would be later in 2025. And we're looking at charitable program integration and sort of inbound tourism as well for second quarter 2025. In terms of territorial expansion, we already have partners set up in the territories of the US, the UK, and Europe. But of course, integrating with them and progressing the program requires, additional capital. So we hope that will be funded through our efforts in Australia. And then with regards to customized card, this is the work we've been doing with Placard. This is where a simple customization of a card enables it to be used with OtherPay. There's basically nothing to stop us from having that dialogue now. And we are currently in that sort of dialogue with regards to both financial and non-financial cards, such that they can be used with OtherPay when our product launches and goes to market. A couple of sort of owner benefits, just to let you know that we have intended to do an exclusive limited edition owner Duo and One card that will be distributed to owners, OtherPay owners. And also the enhanced rewards program that we have will forfeit the rebate margin on that from owners' expenditure to enhance that particular sort of rewards program. So just a couple of additional owner benefits there. But beyond that, as I sort of said, we wanted to come at this presentation from a slightly different perspective, emphasize what the problem is, what we're looking to do. If there's any questions specific to the product itself, then obviously we can answer those. And hopefully the offer letter will provide you with all of the answers that you seek. But I think for now that was really it. I'll hand it back to Emily and perhaps to Darren if there's anything you need to add, Darren, or do you think I've covered it?
Darren, you're on mute.
Sorry, I had a motorbike going by before. Yeah, thanks, Simon. Again, I think it's detailed everything in there. And look, from what you can see, there are various avenues that we will progress into, over the next 6 to 12 months. But very excited to actually get it launched and get some feedback now as well.
Brilliant. All right, let's launch into the questions. They're coming in thick and fast. So can you explain a little bit about how the product actually works?
Yes, obviously. So the product itself there are two components. We obviously talk about the Duo and the One product. If I start with the Duo product, the difference there is that Duo, it's around 1 millimeter thick. It's going to be a metallic product. It has a alphanumeric keyboard. Sorry, not alphanumeric keyboard. Has a keyboard, has an e-ink display, an embedded battery. It's good for 3 years, or around 3,000, 4,000 uses. The product works on the basis that when you bring the card, initially the OtherPay prepaid card in close proximity to the Duo device, it'll activate the Duo device such that you can generate unique codes for that particular prepaid card. And when I say unique codes, by inputting the PIN. Now, it's not a validated PIN. You input the secret PIN you have. So there's nothing internal to the device that says whether the PIN is correct or not. You're basically inputting a PIN to the device, which will generate a 4-digit PIN for point of sale ATM use, a 3-digit security code. Now, these are codes with the PIN embedded within them, or an authentication code. So from online shopping, and this is where there's no change at the merchant, no change to the ATM, no change to the point of sale, no change to the merchant checkout. You're just changing the experience or your experience such that the security code you input when you're shopping online would be the 3-digit security code that's been generated by Duo. If you're at a ATM, you're going to be putting in the one-time PIN. So if somebody is looking over you or if it's being skimmed or something, it doesn't matter. There's no value to that data anymore because that only works once. And then our technology also works on the basis that whilst we have a zero tolerance for fraud, from a tap and pay perspective, as you initially tap, you're expected to type in the one-time code that's displayed. But as time goes by and we learn your behavior and you select where you're happy to basically do contactless up to a certain level, as opposed to the bank dictating that, well, I'll allow that for $100 or $200. So you'll be able to dictate that through the application. So the way Duo works is, and that's why Duo is, you're bringing two devices together. our model, therefore, is to talk to financial, non-financial organizations that can embed a little bit of the technology within the card. Very economical, low cost placard, don't change their manufacturing process at all, manufacture the card, distribute the card, and then that can be used with Duo for either authentication, payments, etc., etc. Now, one is slightly different in that it's a single product. The product itself is a MasterCard product. You're then able, through our application, to link multiple payment cards. So as I mentioned with regards to our target market, for those who are not getting the relief from their bank to support this sort of a technology, they could link their card to our particular device and use it to front the transactions. And fronting those transactions is the same. Input the PIN, generate a one-time PIN, security code, or authentication code. So that's how it works.
Amazing. And we have a digital wallet version of the card.
Yeah, we do actually. But I mean, with regards to the mobile phone, as we said, sort of zero tolerance is that anything on a mobile phone, whilst we respect those people that use it, our view is that you can't rely on the security of it. It's always going to be attacked. We are developing sort of a derivative of the one, in that with Bluetooth capability and encryption between the two, you could attach a device to the mobile phone and it sort of emulates an experience like Apple Pay. The difference, though, is that whilst Apple Pay emulates a payment card, we have control of the transaction from beginning to end. So that transaction will basically go through OtherPay before it does a back-end transaction with the card that you've decided to basically use with it. But the difference with that is whichever transaction you do, it's processed as a card present transaction. For those that understand the difference between the two, card present obviously needs to be present at an ATM or point of sale. Card not present, where most of the fraud occurs, is where the card is supposedly not required because you may have the credentials you need. With OtherPay, every transaction is a card present transaction. So it somewhat changes that whole dynamic with regards to whether you've got to have the card or not.
Yeah, right. It makes a whole heap of sense. I feel like you have probably answered this a little bit because of the way that you've described how the card works. But in terms of the behavioral change on the part of the consumer, how significant is that versus using a normal card in day-to-day?
So, I mean, honestly, there's an additional step. You know, we're not hiding the fact that it's not more convenient. It is those willing to take an additional step to protect themselves. So in terms of the two together, the experience of sort of just tapping that in when you're in the queue waiting to pay, that is relatively seamless. It is something that you need to educate yourself to do, as opposed to those that maybe just like to take out the card, tap it and leave. You know, clearly there's a threat there with regards to that. We're trying to eliminate that. And if the consumer's willing to eliminate it, they will be typing in a PIN to generate a code they can then use when they tap. If they're in an ATM, as they're queuing up to withdraw the cash, they'll derive what the PIN is. And then, you just got to remember a one-time PIN for the next 10 seconds before you put it in. But you could tell anybody what that PIN is. It doesn't matter because it's not going to work the next time. The experience of shopping online, one could argue that maybe it is more convenient with OtherPay because the regulatory drive with regards to schemes and industry to incorporate additional controls, such as you might have to get an SMS code or you may have to go and authenticate on the application. I think everybody can see these additional controls are being put in place because there is so much fraud online. But ours, this is called 3D Secure. So with regards to that particular technology, it's no longer required. So if you're doing a transaction with OtherPay, you'll type in the PIN, gives you the three-digit security code. That's all you need to input. By virtue of that transaction, you've pretty much done what they would have otherwise been asking you to do. So that sort of simplifies the process. So it's a bit of a mixed bag of, whether it makes, if you have to take an additional step or actually a reduction in steps.
Yeah, great. That makes a lot of sense. What would the cost be to the user for the product?
So at the moment, to be honest with you, our cost model at the moment is around the $49 mark. As a one-off cost, there's no fees with regards to the product. But with regards to purchasing the product, we're looking around $49.
Thank you. So looking at a global market that provides a significant amount of opportunity, are there any different control gaps internationally that would mean that OtherPay wouldn't be able to make as big of an impact on card fraud? Obviously it's a global problem, not just an Australian problem, card fraud. So would there be any barriers to entry there?
No, fortunately not. Fortunately, the dynamic or the fraud dynamic is the same, is pretty much the same wherever you go. It's interesting that in the UK, for example, transactionally at a certain level, the tap and pay or the tap and pin is not really prevalent. If I'm over a contactless level in the UK, you have to dip the card. I mean, you go to the US and they're even further behind. If you look at Australia, we're way ahead as an organization with regards to tap and pin. So as a product, it's very rare at a store that I'd have to insert the card into the point of sales machine. In Australia, you're almost at a point where it doesn't matter what shape that product is. As long as the technology is in place such that you can generate the one-time code, we simply have created it the size of a card, because when you travel and when we're looking to launch in the US, Europe, and the UK, the technology is still such that I'm going to need to dip that card at a certain point. So the experience is slightly different, but the control and the risk is exactly the same.
So speaking of international expansion, do you have a bit of a time frame in mind for when you'd look to go international?
Yeah, but I mean, based on Australia and the success of that, we've chosen a processing partner that has a global reach. What we didn't want to do was basically end up having to do processing and integration with an issuing partner in every territory. That is fairly time consuming and complicated and expensive. So our processing partner has global capabilities, global partners. We have to team up with local issuing partners. In time, who's to say whether or not we get our own issuing license? But at the moment, we ride the shirt tails of everybody else from a licensing and a regulatory perspective. It's the fastest way to market. So from a processing perspective, we have a global footprint. From an issuing perspective, we already have partners lined up in the United States, UK, and Europe. Time-wise, we'd like to be in a position where we can pursue those in the middle of 2025.
Brilliant. Pretty soon.
Hopefully without having to raise funds, which is, well, yes. I mean, we're hoping the success of Australia would enable us, provide us with the capital to do that without having to raise more funds. One could sit here and argue that if we were to raise more funds, then we could obviously pursue the UK. But our intent is to absolutely get it right in Australia first.
Awesome. So you mentioned that transactional flow is owned by OtherPay. Does this mean that the money flow is from a user's account to OtherPay or wherever they're using the card? How does that work?
No, I suppose so. The transactional flow, when I say is owned by OtherPay, so from our issuing perspective and the licensing we have to hold that particular money is, if it's being used the Duo device and you have a prepaid card, you will have a balance sitting on the prepaid account. So forgetting OtherPay as a conventional card, you'll spend it, and if you have sufficient balance, then basically you can settle the transaction. If it's a one product, the difference there is that you will be carrying a one product which is in itself a MasterCard product, but it'll be backed by the various cards that you want to link to it. So initially, the transaction that I will do will be, for example, the MasterCard OtherPay transaction. But in seeking money for settlement, I'll be going and talking to ANZ Visa or Westpac or whatever to basically ascertain that you have sufficient funds to settle that particular transaction. So the flow is through there. As I mentioned earlier with regards to Apple Pay, is that if I touch Apple Pay, it's simply emulating that card. So the transaction flow just goes straight through to whoever's card you're using. If you've linked to OtherPay, you're actually doing an OtherPay transaction.
That's good to know. So instead of the additional PIN code that is generated by the card, have you considered implementing a fingerprint scanner?
We have, and the technology is there. But again, in terms of the technology having been there over probably the past decade, it's simply not scalable in our in that type of a product. And if you're looking at the the fraud vectors and the various things could be done, and somebody touching the card every day, would trying to avoid what is basically any threat to the solution. So from a zero tolerance perspective with regards to fraud, the idea of a fingerprint scanner, whilst having been considered, is not a direction that we're looking to head in.
Good to know. So are you planning on selling or licensing this technology to banks so that other banks could supply this solution through their platform?
Absolutely. But I think the key dynamic there, and I think we put a nice visual in the offer document when it comes through, in that looking at a strategy where we could go to 66, I think there's about 66 card issuers in Australia. So we could sit down with them and try to convince them that, this is a great solution, et cetera, et cetera. They always want to see traction. So the idea in terms of going to a market where we've got traction, such that if I then go back into one of those banks with the support of consumers that are already carrying Duo, to then try to sell them a product whereby you've already got 1,000 customers or whatever are using the product, they very much want you to reissue the card with the capability by which to use Duo, then you're looking at a licensing opportunity. Now, we're not saying that OtherPay debit as well is an exclusive product. If a bank wanted to issue our product as a one card or as a prepaid card, absolutely, we'd look to license the technology. Our intent is to fix the problem. It's just the sales strategy is coming at it from a different way, in that if we try to penetrate the banks from the ground up, that's going to be very difficult. But we already know that there's a willing consumer base out there looking to use it. And so if I can go back into the bank with measurable information and intelligence with regards to consumers that are using it, they're gonna look at the proposition very differently.
So the way that the OtherPay process works, do you have a visual representation or a flow diagram of sorts showing how the model works and the various components?
Yes, yeah, we do. Not something I could pull up. Not something I could pull up immediately, but I'm trying to think where we could sort of put that. It's a fairly simple flow. I could probably incorporate that. I mean, as a question, we can incorporate that within the offer document. I think that's probably the easiest thing to do, such that individuals can understand the flow of that particular transaction. So allow us to do that. We'll incorporate the flow within.
That's brilliant. I mean, there's also the opportunity to pop it in your activity feed through Birchal, so it can go out to everybody who has followed your campaign. That could work really, really well.
Yep.
Cool. So if someone were to look over someone's shoulder and see the PIN input through the OtherPay card, could they then potentially, steal the card out of your wallet and use it until you realize the card is stolen? How does that work?
Yes, absolutely. I'll always remember, from a security perspective, I'll always remember when I was first asked, after I've been in the bank for a couple of years, like, have you fixed all the problems yet? It's like they'll never be fixed. There's only a level to which you can basically sort of get. So from a consumer's perspective, and having used this sort of device, if somebody's standing close to me, I'm not going to be inputting my PIN, because yes, you reach a point where if somebody has seen me input the PIN, fine, they've got the PIN. The difference, though, is that in our product, you can't attach something to it that would record the PIN capture. You can't, put some skimming device or a camera in place that would capture it. So yeah, I'm not standing here and sort of saying, no, that can't be defrauded as well. Yeah, of course it can. If someone sees you input the PIN and they steal the card, the only thing that we're then able to do is to, as we do through the application, is you're being informed of the various transactions, and you'd have to basically go and kill the card. But if used in the way it's intended and nobody sees the PIN, then absolutely can't be defrauded. I'm sorry, there's not a better answer to that question, but no, I can't fix that problem.
Fair enough. In terms of your IP, do you have any concerns around defensibility?
No, for a number of reasons. I mean, obviously there's competition there. I mean, we're very, very confident with regards to the patents that we have, the patents that are pending, the relationships we have. I mean, if you look at the relationship we have with Placard, for example, they're the only manufacturer in Australia that can make secure cards. So anybody else looking to make them, well, they're going to be hard pushed to do anything in Australia. Territorially elsewhere as well, our relationship with MasterCard is such that if someone was to come on to try to compete, well, MasterCard's aware of the intellectual property we have, so they would be not supportive of that particular product as well. So we have both patent protection, commercial protection, and sort of partnership protection that gives us that. And we would hope that would give us, a very, very good degree of protection there.
Right. So in terms of consumer data, how is that housed, and how can you ensure that it's secure?
So again, with regards to, we don't hold the data. I mean, that is obviously PSD2 compliant organizations that are responsible for that particular data. They're certified with regards to what they have to do. If I was in a position where we had to do that, then obviously that's a question I would have to answer with regards to our technology background. reliance on that data protection exists with those that are basically licensed to do so. So at the moment, that would be reliant on our processing, issuing partners, MasterCard as a partner in terms of their protection of that data, which one has to assume is pretty good. So, yeah.
One would.
One would, yes.
With the cost of the card coming in at $49, do you suspect this will be a barrier to entry for any new consumers?
To be honest with you, no. For those that are interested in doing so and understanding the fraud implications with regards to the product, we don't. With regards to those, from a techno-savvy perspective, in an industry where this sort of technology has been marketed, similar technology before. I don't know if anyone on the call is familiar with like Coin. Coin was a card, or Plast-C, Stratos, Wocket. There are a number of problems around a decade ago where magnetic stripe, they had basically worked out a way where you could dynamically change the mag stripe on the card. So if you could put ultimate cards within a single card and just simply change the mag stripe each time you go and swipe it. Unfortunately, the problem then became the kit bag of the fraudsters, is that I've now got 10 cards within one and I'm just basically swiping a mag stripe. But the sales point there was around $150 and the sales volumes were incredibly high. We're not really looking to make money and margin on the card. I know this is a Q&A for investors, but our model is to try and keep it affordable. And then obviously the revenue streams are through the program itself in terms of what we can then do from the on sales and the other revenue streams that are generated as a result.
Good to know.
And just as another point on that as well, the merchant rebates that we're expecting to come back just from general spend on the cards, we would expect that cost to be covered very quickly from the consumer's point of view to be able to offset the cost of that the card purchase.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, great. So do you have a goal of the number of users that you want to bring onto the platform in the next 12 months?
In the next 12 months, our goal, and again, being very careful with regards to, various statements, but we've run some models with regards to the research we've done, sort of categorizing those consumers that have been defrauded, various other categories with regards to affordability, et cetera, et cetera. And I think in the first year, we're targeting around 200,000 users. Which from our perspective, is an extremely lucrative sort of program to reach that. But that is aspirationally the sort of number that we're looking at reaching, which we think is infinitely achievable in this territory.
Brilliant. What kind of marketing are you looking to be doing to get new customers on board?
So I think with regards to the raise, and Darren and I were talking about this the other day, obviously there's talk of the influencers, the social media campaigns, et cetera, but there's clearly going to need to be some major media advertising, whether it's radio, TV. We obviously need to get ourselves out there as much as possible. So a considerable budget has been put aside for that marketing spend. We're not naive enough to think that it's just going to be through word of mouth. We need to do some serious advertising and marketing for this to sort of achieve those particular volumes. So all sort of media channels will be considered, and we'll see what the return on those will be at the end.
So can you explain a little bit about why you've decided to go through the equity crowdfunding route versus other traditional forms of fundraising?
Well, with regards to our needs, it's an unusual one in that we've sort of found that probably raising 50 million or 100 million these days, people tend to think is maybe a little bit easier, but we're looking to return sort of real shareholder value with regards to what we believe we can do. We don't need to raise that amount of money. The idea of raising 3 million from those that are supportive of Australian industry here and doing the campaign that we've been doing through Birchal has been, interesting, rewarding from our perspective. Getting the support of those in Australia behind us to basically get the program up here. We were looking for that sort of support. It's very easy sometimes to find maybe we would have got the 3 or the 5 or the 10 from somebody else. And again, that could be argued as a strategic investor, but we've done all of the hard graft. We've got all of the partners that we need. We're looking to push it through to the market. So the idea of this, when Birchal was introduced to us, we thought was absolutely ideal for the quantum we're looking for from an investment perspective, and the sort of shareholders that we want to basically come along on the journey with us.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of having new shareholders on board who are ambassadors for the product, who really believe in it. And, the best advertising at the end of the day is often word of mouth, and people who are backing the product because they are part owners is a really valuable aspect of
Absolutely.
CSF shareholders on your cap table.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned earlier about sort of the member card as a metal one with the owner engraved within it. We're hoping people will pull that out with a degree of pride and sort of show that. And then again, in terms of what that then moves on to, we all know what people pulling out the Black American Express titanium card sort of thing. There's the credibility and the prestige associated with it. And that is very much around our sort of brand strategy. We want to be seen as, credible, prestigious, high quality. And that's what we're seeking. So with the sort of number of investors we're looking at here, who as ambassadors, as you say, that's far better than a single investor sitting there, particularly if they're non-strategic.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently, I'm sure you've tested this to a small number of market researchers. How has the feedback been from these users?
Mixed, as you'd expect. But the predominant feedback with regards to the target markets, as we said, is that undoubtedly, if you look at all of the categories of the target market, there are segments within those that we've researched that will be absolutely, yes. It is unacceptable. What have I got to do to take the extra step? They ask the various questions. If I'm going to the same coffee shop, have I got to do that every time? Within our solution, it works on the basis of what the consumer chooses, not what the bank chooses. So we're really putting control back with the consumer. So with regards to target segments, it's like absolutely within those. But you will always get someone who's like, nah, I'm not prepared to take the additional step. Others that I don't care if I'm defrauded. I mean, unfortunately, if you look at levels of friendly fraud, where the percentage of people that believe that doing a chargeback because they're not going to get a refund is acceptable, again, something that we can't resolve. But we're not looking to. If it was a one size fits all and we've got to convince the banks to change what's there now with something else, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. We're targeting those who we believe will come on the journey with us. And I absolutely appreciate there will be other people turning around saying, I'm not going to do that. And we expect that and we respect it. But no, certainly within the research that we've done, it aligns with our target market that there are absolutely willing consumers who will take that additional step.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you considered a referral code or a link for investors to direct potential other customers to for the card? Perhaps useful for investors that work within the tech and finance industry so they can help spread the word about the product to their clients?
Mm-hmm. Oh, certainly we'll take that on. Yeah, absolutely. We'd take that on board. At the end of the day, it is, as you say, the market reach, whether it's through a referral program, rewards, whatever we can basically do. Yes, if any of our investors and supporters have a suggestion, then absolutely we'll take that on board. Because at the end of the day, it's getting out there as to as many people as we possibly can. And as we said, with regards to the rewards, yes, for the owners and those that are supporting, we want to give as much back as we can. So if within the rewards program we effectively forfeit the margin such that they benefit, that's the sort of thing that we're looking to do. So yeah, referral program. I think Darren could probably talk more about that, basically on your experience, Darren.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, especially for referrals to sporting groups that have got grassroots reasons that they're needing to raise funds for your charities and your not-for-profits, to get those warm handovers to those sorts of groups where we're potentially being put in front of tens and thousands of their members, and that one of the key aspects of the card is that it can be white labeled to those particular groups. So they'll always be promoting themselves rather than promoting OtherPay, but it will be our tech that's sitting in there in the background. So yes, we certainly will have an affiliate program to have those referrals come through, and again, a split of the commission, which we can do at an easy stage of the transaction.
Awesome.
So yes, thank you.
So when the card is going to be launched, what is the earliest time frame that investors could order one for $49 in order to test it and get a feel for the OtherPay system?
I think aspirationally, again, if those sort of investors again are helping us in terms of pilot, testing various platforms, the intent in terms of going out from a pre-sales perspective, we would of course be looking to push out those links earlier than we would be looking to go to the public. So at the moment, if we would look at the timelines and being reasonable with regards to how long these things take, we would be hoping by October we will be able to be pushing out the pre-sales campaign to the public. Prior to that, we would obviously make that available to the owners. However, from the owner's perspective, as we said, with regards to a benefit, our intent is to provide all of them with a free one anyway. So so with regards to having to order, yeah, we'll take that burden away from you. So
Awesome. So if somebody wanted to use their Visa or American Express, do they only need to have the OtherPay card with them or the physical bank cards from Visa or American Express with them at the same time?
right, it depends on which which product you're looking at. So if it's duo, our hope is, and the question was asked in terms of, are you looking to sell and license to the banks? Absolutely. So if we're looking at an American Express, if I had X number of people that have taken out an OtherPay card who say, I'd really like my American Express to work this way, then our ability to go into American Express and see if they're willing to reissue plastic with a little bit of the OtherPay technology within it, such that they work together, then the answer to the question is yes, you have to have the two together, because you'll put American Express with Duo to generate the codes. If it's a one product, no. You could link those at home to the one, and then you could leave all your cards in the drawer at home and basically just use the one card.
Good to know. So currently, how big is the target market that you're looking at reaching?
Yeah,
Anybody with a bank card, I wonder.
well, basically, yes. I mean, it is a, if you look at from the Australian market perspective, you need to start at, oops, have we lost Emily? No, there you are. Yeah, so if we're looking at 17 million consumers and then you sort of cascade down there based on the formula that we have in place, I think, yeah, I don't want to start throwing sort of figures out there with regards, because you're in the billions of consumers in terms of card members, but that is really the target market. And statistically, if you look at the level of fraud and the value of the fraud, that is really what we're targeting to reduce. The extent to which we could potentially benefit from a reduction of that fraud level is certainly a commercial model that we can look at. But yeah, I can't give you a single figure. All I can say is it's extremely large and it's global. I don't know if anything you can add to that, Darren, or.
No, again, that's the same thing. It's the number of card holders globally is it's in the billions, and there's no issues in any country that we've delved into at this stage.
No. And it's also non-financial as well. So I think it's also important to point out that whilst we're talking a lot about MasterCard, the products and services, from an authentication perspective, with a lot of non-financial organizations looking at stronger authentication, they can similarly integrate something in with what could be an airline membership card, an ID card, a driving license. So again, there's an extension of that particular model that would work with Duo to provide stronger authentication. And other capabilities as well. There are some other features within the Duo device that you could basically force an organization to authenticate to you first before you actually have to authenticate to them. So there are additional features within the solution that go beyond just the generation of a passcode.
So looking at your business model and the product, do you have a patent on this? What's to say that a Big Four bank might not copy the payment system and then internally for OtherPay and investors out of their future return on investment?
No, I think addressing that one earlier is that the patents and the patents pending and the commercial relationships and partnerships is that we have, if you look at Australia particularly, a very strong partnership in the HID Global Placard relationship. So in terms of what we're doing there, for somebody else to come along and say, oh, can you make this for us? Well, Placard know that we own the intellectual property. They're not going to do it. Similarly, the work that we've been doing with MasterCard and the product, the dynamic we've done there, there are also some various design patents around the technology, but there's also some granted patents around the internals and how the product works, and some pending patents with regards to how it comes together. So from my experience, from the bank's perspective, they're not going to push against someone if they think that there's enough commercial protection there that it's not worth it. You'll basically form a relationship and license the technology that way.
So for people who are lazy, they love a tap and go system. How do you intend to tackle that? Or is this kind of product not necessarily for those people?
I think it's not for them. I had an interesting conversation with one of the investors who was interested a few days ago, in that he admitted that he just it's too easy. It would be an additional step. But I would like to think that what he was aware of and realised that is whilst he might do it that way, he does appreciate that others will be more than willing to do the step. So I think it went back to what I said earlier. We're not gonna reach everybody. Taking that additional step is going to be too much for some people, but not for a market size that's pretty significant.
Yeah, great to know. So just wondering, for people who might use their tap and go card on public transport, is there the ability to use OtherPay in those scenarios?
Yes, I think and I mentioned previously from an application perspective, whilst we have zero tolerance, we're also respective of what a consumer may want to do. We don't like the idea of transactions over $100, or as I experienced in the UK recently, I think a transaction of about $700 went through on tap and pay. I can't work out how. I didn't ask for a PIN. I don't feel comfortable with that sort of thing. I want to be able to put in a one-time PIN, or even at this point with the solution I have, it's like, just ask me for the PIN. At least there's some degree of security there. But if somebody's taking public transport and you're looking at the value of the transaction at that particular level, then we would simply suggest within the application that you grant, you basically request the facts like, no, don't push me for a one-time PIN for that transaction. You may go to the same coffee shop every day, which is fine. You want to be able to do transactions at a certain level there. So this is all we're saying, is that we're giving responsibility back to the consumers. Like, well, you tell us where you basically want it. There's a level at which we'll basically accept the risk before we insist that, no, you really want to be putting in a one-time PIN. But for those lower value transactions, yeah, we don't want to make it overly onerous such that you've got to get on there, put in a PIN, work it out, tap it. No. The fact is there's no way to type in the PIN anyway. So you've got to consider that as well.
There you go. So with OtherPay One, given it's linked to all of the cards, does OtherPay One also contain additional safety features such as a one-time PIN code built in? And what if the OtherPay One card is compromised?
No, so the OtherPay One is an extension of Duo. It's your input in the PIN. There's no, as we said, there's no validation on the PIN. It doesn't have to be validated, because again, there would be a weak point within the solution if by inputting a PIN, it tells you if you've got the PIN right or not. So you type in a PIN, your PIN, the same secret PIN every time. That generates the one-time code that you need. So when you type that into the ATM, the point of sales machine, that will come back ultimately through the processor to our issuer. That will reverse the transaction to see, was the PIN input correct based on the code generation. So you're very much going back to where you were previously. If somebody is looking over your shoulder and they see the PIN that you've input and then they steal the card, nobody can do anything about that. But if you're using it properly, you could be sitting in a restaurant and give the card to the waitress and tell her what the PIN is. They'll give you a funny look, but they can then walk away, do the transaction with the PIN, come and give the card back to you. They wouldn't be able to run down the road and use it at an ATM because it wouldn't work. So it sort of changes that dynamic in a way.
Okay.
Yeah, I might just add something in there as well. So just to clarify, so the Duo is a millimeter thick, so it wouldn't fit into an ATM or an FPOS machine without any changes to that infrastructure.
Yeah.
Whereas the One card is the exact same size as a traditional card, so nothing needs to change as far as an ATM or FPOS.
Yeah.
But it still has the same power button, e-ink screen, and the keypad on the physical card itself.
Yeah, that's good to know. That's a really good clarification between the two products.
Yeah.
So have you given any thought to the protection that card companies currently give to cardholders that have been subjected to fraud, and whether that's enough? Even though fraud obviously is a major problem and it's inconvenient, are the protections that are put in place by current card issuers enough where people are refunded their money in many cases where where they've been a victim of fraud? Do you have any opinions on that?
No, the opinion is we agree that from a regulatory perspective, consumers are protected. Ultimately, you will be. For those that have gone through the experience of having to investigate, and it can sometimes take months to get the money back. Ultimately, I think, as I said at the bottom of the screen, it's like no matter who commits the fraud, everybody's the victim. Whether it's an increase in the merchant's price for their retail products, whether it's the banking fees, etc., it's fine to say that protection is there for people that are defrauded. Our point is, why are we allowing them to be defrauded in the first place? That's really the difference. I'm not going to be uber critical of what exists today, other than doesn't quite fix the problem. We're suggesting we can fix the problem. We see the two working in tandem, and the protections that are afforded consumers are right to an extent, because the banks are the ones that are giving you a suboptimal solution. Therefore, why should you have to pay if you're defrauded? That would really be my opinion with regards to it, is that, I think the protection is there. But again, we're looking at those consumers that don't believe that there should be any fraud, and the fact that we're allowing, particularly in Australia alone, 2.2 billion to just go down the drain to fraudsters and criminals is just, I didn't think that's not our culture. We shouldn't be allowing this. And Australia can set the standard for everybody else by saying enough's enough. Here's a solution that can basically fix the problem.
Yeah, 100%. So is there a time delay between generating the one-time code and the transaction being approved?
No, it's the same as it is today. I mean, we have the X number of milliseconds to do the transaction. So in terms of generating the code on the phone, sorry, not the phone, in terms of generating the code on the card, the point at which then the terminal, whether it's the ATM machine or the point of sales machine, says input the PIN, it's exactly the same. So if you input the PIN today and you say how long it takes, ours takes exactly the same. Because if it takes longer, there's a window of opportunity to fraud. So they only allow a certain amount of time for that transaction to occur, and we fit within that window. Excuse me.
Oh, you're grand. Okay, I think that's everybody's questions. Everybody's been, oh no, we've got one more, beg your pardon. So can you, are you able to provide a one-pager on the difference between the two products, so the One and the Duo, to help customers with understanding the products as well as investors?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think with regards to, I think if you go to the website, if you go to OtherPay's website, there is obviously the One and the Duo is explained there. And there's also a step-by-step process in terms of how to use it. So obviously we've been doing a lot through Birchal, but obviously OtherPay has its website. And within that, I think if anyone goes and has a look, there's the various step process that you have to go through. So hopefully that will be enough for somebody to see.
That's really helpful.
Excuse me, sorry.
Your OtherPay One card, can they make purchases with the pins that they select on the card?
Can they make purchases with the PIN?
I think that's the Duo, if I'm understanding this correctly.
Right. So, sorry, can you repeat the question then?
If someone steals somebody's OtherPay One card, can they then make purchases with pins that they select?
Oh gosh, no, no. You need to have the secret. You need to understand the secret PIN. I think the difference is, if you take it a step back to that point, is that if anybody had knowledge of your secret PIN and had the card, we're pretty much done for. You need other controls in place whereby you just got to be alerted to the fact that, oh my God, someone's using my card. I need to stop it as quickly as I possibly can. That's one step. Ours just takes it a different step, in that I'm inputting a PIN that is my secret to something I can't trust, and that everybody knows is insecure. And so it could be read, it could be phished, it could be grabbed, it could be skimmed. So that's the difference. So if I'm typing in my PIN 1234 to a point of sale or an ATM, that's the point at which it could be stolen, and I don't know it. But if my PIN is 1234, but I'm typing in 3725, I really don't care. And so that's the difference, is when you break down the transactional flow, that's the protection that we're basically providing the consumer.
Right. So I think this one, basically the Duo, which physically surrounds the card, can generate the code to enter a PIN at the terminal. So it's mainly for tap purchases?
Tap and dip. So it's for tap. Tap. So when it comes back and says input the one-time PIN, you'll input the one-time PIN. As I said previously, if I'm in the UK or the US and I've actually got to insert the card, I insert the card, I input the four-digit PIN. If I'm at an ATM machine, I will input the one-time four-digit PIN that's displayed. And if I'm shopping online, I input the three-digit security code that's displayed. So what you're actually doing at that point, you tell the device. There are feature buttons on the device such that I'm at a point of sale, I'm going to generate the four-digit code for a point of sale ATM. If I'm shopping online, I'll generate the three-digit code. So you generate the code you need for the purpose you need it for. It'll be a six-digit code if you're doing an authentication, for example.
Okay, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, great.
Awesome. Right, we've gotten through all of the questions today, and there were so many. So thank you to everybody for being so engaged. We really appreciate it. But also understand that sometimes you go away from these and you've got a burning question. So if you do have any, please head to the OtherPay page on the Birchal platform. There is a message button, so you can message the team at OtherPay. And also, if you have any questions about investing at all, if you're confused in any way about what equity crowdfunding might be or how you invest through the platform, please email us at support@birchal.com. We will be happy to help. Thank you for everybody for listening today. And thank you so much, Simon and Darren, for your time. We really appreciate it and can't wait to see your offer go live on the Birchal platform.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Emily. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.